und Halt aller sagt.
Let us begin with prayer.
Lasst uns mit Gebet anfangen. Dear Heavenly Father,
Lieber himmlischer Vater,
Lord, we thank you that we can come again and open your word.
Herr, wir danken dir, dass wir wieder hier zusammenkommen können und dein Wort öffnen können.
Please forgive us our sins
Bitte vergib uns unsere Sünden
and wash us by the blood of Christ.
und wasche uns durch das Blut Jesu.
And please send the two anointed ones to us now
Und bitte sende die zwei Gesalbten zu uns jetzt
and help us through the Holy Spirit to hear and to understand the word.
und hilf uns durch deinen Heiligen Geist, dein Wort jetzt zu hören und zu verstehen.
And give us the golden oil for our lamps.
Und bitte gib uns das goldene Öl für unsere Lampen.
Please bless my brother Lawrence as he lays out your thoughts.
Bitte segne meinen Bruder Lorenz, wenn er deine Gedanken auslegt.
And I ask and pray that you would help each of us that are listening to receive your word with joy and gladness.
Und hilf uns allen, die wir zuhören, dein Wort zu erhalten mit Freude und Frohlocken.
Please help the word to fall into the good ground of our heart.
Bitte hilf, dass das Wort in den guten Boden unseres Herzens fällt.
And when we leave here, it would not be stolen away by the birds.
Wenn wir hier dann den Raum verlassen, dass es nicht von den Vögeln weggestohlen wird.
And we thank you for all this in Jesus' name.
Wir danken für all das in Jesu Namen.
Amen.
Amen. Okay, so we posted the notes in the live stream group,
So die Notizen, die sind in der Livestream-Gruppe gepostet worden.
and I wanted to look again at this US Civil War,
Und ich wollte diese US-Bürgerkrieg nochmal anschauen.
and there are three main chapters in First Testimonies about the US Civil War.
Und im ersten Band der Zeugnisse gibt es 3 Kapitel über den US-Bürgerkrieg. Oder 3 Hauptkapitel.
And I thought we would read through those chapters,
Und ich dachte, wir werden diesen Kapiteln durchlesen.
and then once we refreshed our memory, we can then also try to find things or principles that might now also apply to this current war in Ukraine.
Und wenn, nachdem wir es gelesen haben, daran erinnert werden, dann können wir Prinzipien darin suchen und erkennen, die vielleicht auf diesen Krieg in der Ukraine anzuwenden sind.
Okay, because it was here a war between the North and the South, right?
Denn hier war das ein Krieg zwischen Norden und Süden.
And yes, and there are definitely some principles involved that we can use. Okay.
Und auf jeden Fall gibt es einige Prinzipien darin, die wir von Gebrauch machen können.
Okay, but as you can see, 16 pages.
Aber wie ihr sehen könnt, ist es 16 Seiten lang.
Therefore, we won't be able to read through all of it tonight. Okay.
So, deswegen werden wir alles heute Abend nicht hindurchlesen können.
Okay. But we can start and see how far we get.
Aber wir können anfangen und mal schauen, wie weit wir kommen.
Okay. And we again do it one paragraph per person. Okay.
Und wir werden das so machen, dass jeder einen Absatz liest pro Person.
And please remember, therefore, to read loud and clearly that the microphone can pick it up.
Und bitte gedenke daran, so laut und deutlich zu lesen, sodass der Mikrofon hier vorne es auch hören kann.
Okay. So let's begin in chapter 53,
So fangen wir in Kapitel 53 an,
which is this introduction to this civil war
diese Einleitung zum Bürgerkrieg.
called the North and the South.
Und es heißt der Norden und Süden.
Okay, let's begin.
Fangen wir an.
It says, January 4th, 1862, I was shown some things in regard to our nation. My attention was called to the Southern Rebellion. The South had prepared themselves for fierce conflict, while the North were asleep as to their true feelings. Before President Lincoln's administration commenced, great advantage was taken by the South. The former administration planned and managed for the South to rob the North of the implements of war. They had 2 objects for so doing. They were contemplating a determined rebellion and must prepare for it. When they should rebel, the North would be wholly unprepared. They would thus gain time, and by their violent threats and ruthless course, they thought they could so intimidate the North that they would be obliged to yield to them and let them have everything their own way. Okay, so here we can see the South rebelled against the North, right?
So hier können wir sehen, der Süden hat gegen den Norden rebelliert.
And they planned it for a long time, but the North were unaware of it.
Who was unaware of it?
The North.
the north. Also sie haben das lang geplant, aber den Norden waren es nicht bewusst.
Okay, let's continue. Next paragraph, please.
Nächster Absatz.
Ramak, want to read this first?
It says, the North did not understand the bitter, dreadful hatred of the South toward them, and were unprepared for their deep-laid plots. The North had boasted of their strength and ridiculed the idea of the South leaving the Union. They considered it like the threats of a willful, stubborn child, and thought that the South would soon come to their senses and become sick of leaving the Union, would with humble apologies return to their allegiance. The North have had no just idea of the strength of the accursed system of slavery. It is this, and this alone, which lies at the foundation of the war. The South have been more and more exacting. They consider it perfectly right to engage in human traffic, to deal in slaves and the souls of men. They are annoyed and become perfectly exasperated if they cannot claim all the territory they desire. They would tear down the boundaries and bring their slaves to any spot they please, and curse the soil with slave labour. The language of the South has been imperious, and the North have not taken suitable measures to silence it.
Okay, so what can we see here? What does the South do, or what do they regard as perfectly fine?
Was können wir hier sehen? Was tun den Süden? Was sehen sie als völlig okay ein?
Yeah, slavery, right?
Sklaverei.
So here they consider it perfectly right to engage in human traffic, to deal in slaves and the souls of men. Okay, so where else do we see this mentioned in the Bible?
So, wo noch können wir das in der Bibel erwähnt sehen?
Egypt. In Revelation 18.
Yes, Revelation 18. Okay.
Offenbarung 18.
So let's go to Revelation 18.
So, lass uns dahin.
I'm a bit unsure how you're applying this to
No, just let's read this first. Okay. So it says here comes this punishment on Babylon, right?
So, hier kommt diese Bestrafung über Babylon.
Let's read verses 12 to 13.
Aber wir lesen die Versen 12 und 13.
It says, the merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones and of pearls and fine linen and purple and silk and scarlet and all thine wood and all manner of vessels of ivory and all manner of vessels of most precious wood and of brass and iron and marble and cinnamon and odors and ointments and frankincense and wine and oil and fine flour and wheat and beasts and sheep and horses and chariots and slaves and souls of men. So here you also have slaves and souls of men at the end,
Hier
right?
sind auch Sklaven und die Seelen von Menschen erwähnt.
Okay, but this is the punishment on what?
Aber dies ist die Bestrafung auf was?
Babylon.
Babylon,
Auf
right?
Babylon.
Which is the north, right?
Babylon ist der Norden.
Okay, but we can see that the south and the north, they basically have the same mentality, okay?
Wir können sehen, dass die Süden und Norden denselben Mentalität
In a
haben.
sense that they do the same wicked things, okay?
In dem Sinne, dass beide denselben böse Sachen tun.
But what is the difference
Aber
between north and south again?
was ist der Unterschied zwischen Norden und Süden? One does it openly, the other does it secretly.
Yes.
So den einen tut es heimlich, der andere in offenen Rebellion.
So the south is openly advocating it, and the north is basically doing it under religious guise.
So die Süden tun es einfach bloß da und den Norden, sie tun es versteckt hinter ein religiöses Vorwand.
Okay. So now let's go back to First Testimonies.
So gehen wir zurück zu den Notizen, ersten Band Erzeugnis.
And the south, is it also part of Babylon?
Und den Süden, ist das auch ein Teil von Babylon?
Yes, right?
Ja, wohl.
Okay. So it's just the same mindset, but just differently. One does it open, and the other does it under religious
Das
guise.
ist eben derselbe Gedanke. Die eine tut es öffentlich, der andere unter eine religiöse Vorwand.
Okay, but the North in this story is a righteous
Yes.
entity.
That's true. Okay, so but still, you would agree with what I just.
No, I agree that the South is also controlled by the woman, because it says in the, you know, when you look at the statue, it says the woman sits on all the kings, and one of them is Greece, which is, you know, in the prophetic narrative.
Frau sitzt auf
the
all
South.
die Königreiche in der Statue und die eine davon ist Griechenland. Eine prophetische Erzählung, das markiert der Süden, also in dem Sinne.
Yes. Okay, so all right, let's go now back to the next paragraph.
Zur nächsten Absatz.
Beginning with the rebellion.
The rebellion was handled so carefully, so slowly, that many who at first started with horror at the thought of rebellion were influenced by rebels to look upon it as right and just, and thousands joined the Southern Confederacy who would not have prompt and thorough measures carried out by our government at an early period of the rebellion, even as ill prepared as it then was for war. The North have been preparing for war even since,
Ever since.
but the rebellion has been steadily increasing, and there is now no better prospect of its being subdued than there was months ago. Thousands have lost their lives, and many have returned to their homes, maimed and crippled for life, their health gone, their earthly prospects forever blighted, and yet how little has been gained. Thousands have been induced to enlist with the understanding that this war was to exterminate slavery, but now that they are fixed, they find that they have been deceived, that the object of this war is not to abolish slavery, but to preserve it as it is.
Okay, so what can we see here?
So, was können wir hier sehen?
What was not really the goal of the war?
Was war nicht der wirkliche Ziel des Krieges?
Well, the North embarked upon a crusade, you know, with the open understanding that they were going in to abolish this slavery that was being enacted upon God's people.
God's people?
Yeah, if you're...
I mean, spiritually God's people.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, but I mean, the North was openly saying we go down to abolish slavery, but
Die Norden haben öffentlich gesagt, wir gehen hinab, um den Sklaverei ein Ende zu tun.
but obviously it was not really the intention.
Aber das ist nicht ihre wirkliche Absicht.
The problem is the majority of people went there
Because of this
with an
motive.
honest
Yes,
belief in that.
that's
Die
true.
Mehrzahl der Menschen ging ins Krieg mit der ehrlichen Glaube, dass das wohl der Grund sei.
But then they realized that they had been deceived, as she says.
Aber dann stellten sie fest, dass sie verführt würden oder getäuscht würden, wie sie hier sagen.
Okay, and we will see this as we go along.
Und das werden wir sehen, wenn wir so weiterlesen.
Okay, next paragraph.
Nächster Absatz.
Those who have ventured to leave their homes and sacrifice their lives to exterminate slavery are dissatisfied. They see no good results from the war, only the preservation of the Union. And for this, thousands of lives must be sacrificed and homes made desolate.
Okay, stop here. So what is the real goal of the North?
So, was ist der wahre Ziel des Nordens?
To preserve the one world order.
To preserve this union. Yes.
Um diese Union zu präservieren.
Okay. Yes, continue.
Great numbers have wasted away and expired in hospitals. Others have been taken prisoners by the rebels, a fate more to be dreaded than death. In view of all this, they inquire, if we succeed in quelling this rebellion, what has been gained? They can only answer discouragingly, nothing. That which caused the rebellion is not removed. The system of slavery which has ruined our nation is left to live and stir up another rebellion. The feelings of thousands of our soldiers are bitter. They suffer the greatest privations. These they would willingly endure, but they find that they have been deceived, and they are dispirited. Our leading men are perplexed, their hearts are failing them for fear. They fear to proclaim freedom to the slaves of the rebels, for by so doing they will exasperate the portion of the South who have not joined the rebellion, but are strong slavery men. And again they have feared the influence of those strong anti-slavery men who were in command, holding and responsible stations. They have feared the effects of a bold, decided tone, for it fanned to a flame the strong desire of thousands to wipe out the cause of this terrible rebellion by letting the oppressed go free and breaking every yoke.
Okay. So, yeah, there were these strong anti-slavery men, and there were also those that basically were pro-slavery in the north, right? I mean, okay, here it doesn't say this, but it says here, our leading men are perplexed, their hearts are failing them for fear. They fear to proclaim freedom to the slaves of the rebels, for by so doing they will exasperate that portion of the South who have not joined the rebellion, but are strong slavery men. So you had in the South, you had basically one group that was in the rebellion, and then there was another group that has not yet joined the rebellion.
Also in den Süden gab es einen Teil von den Menschen, die ein Teil des Rebellions waren, eine andere Gruppe, die noch nichts in den Rebellion gezogen hatten.
In the North feared that had they proclaimed now liberty to the slaves, the other portion of the South also would have joined the war.
Und die Norden, die fürchteten, dass wenn sie Freiheit den Sklaven verkünden würde, dass das Teil von den Süden, die noch nicht in den Krieg gezogen waren, eben den Kampf anschließen würden.
And then also the responsible men in the North also feared other responsible men in the North that were strong anti-slavery men. Okay.
Und den Führenden im Norden, sie haben auch andere Führenden im Norden, die gegen der Sklaverei waren, gefürchtet.
So there was this undecided position they had, therefore.
Es gab diese unentschlossene Position, die sie da hielten.
Okay. Now let's go to the next. Just let's read the last sentence one more of this
Lesen
paragraph.
wir der letzte Satz nochmal.
Yeah, they have feared the effects of a bold, decided tone, for it fanned to a flame the strong desire of thousands to wipe out the cause of this terrible rebellion by letting the oppressed go free and breaking every yoke. So, where is she quoting from here?
Von wo zitiert sie hier?
Isaiah 58, yes.
Isaiah 58.
Okay, so let's go to Isaiah 58.
So, lass uns dahin.
So this is verse 6 that she is referring to here.
Sie spricht hier über Vers 6.
It says, Is not this the fast that I have chosen, to loose the band of wickedness, to undo the heavy burdens, and to let the oppressed go free, and that he break every yoke? Okay, so here she's speaking about the true fasting, right?
Also hier spricht sie über wahres Fasten.
Okay, so, and obviously who are spiritually spoken the oppressed and the ones with the heavy burdens?
Und geistlich gesprochen, wer sind diejenigen, die unterdrückt sind und schwere Lasten tragen?
In the sense of the black, the slaves.
No, I mean spiritually spoken.
Also geistlich gesprochen.
Yeah, sinners, right?
Sind Sünder.
Okay, those that are in the captivity to sin, that have the chains, the burden of sin on them, right?
Diejenigen, die die Sünde gefangen sind und diese Ketten der Bürde der Sünde mit sich tragen.
So we can see that, we will see over and over again that she uses biblical principles and applies this to this external event, okay?
Also wir werden über und über sehen, dass sie biblische Prinzipien benutzt und wendet sie an zu diese äußerlichen Ereignissen, die da stattfinden.
They're playing a role, exactly.
Also
Okay.
die spielen eben eine Rolle.
So the blacks
Die Schwarzen
illustrate the ones that are in bondage in slavery, right?
stellen diejenigen dar, die in der Knechtschaft sind, in der Sklaverei,
It's slavery to sin.
der
Okay.
Sklaverei zur Sünde.
Okay, because, and this should nothing be, it's nothing about race or racism or whatever,
Und
okay?
das hat nichts mit Rasse oder Rassismus zu tun.
It's the Lord using these things to just teach us spiritual things.
Es ist der Herr, der nutzt diese Umstände, um uns geistliche Sachen zu lehren.
And when you, for instance, go to Job 30, verse 30.
Wenn wir zu Hiob 30, Vers 30 gehen.
No,
30,
30 verse 30.
30.
There's no Job speaking.
Dann spricht Hiob hier.
And then it says here, my skin is black upon me and my bones are burnt with heat. Okay, so it shows here that he's black. Okay,
Es zeigt hier, dass schwarz ist.
okay. And what does Sister White say? What do the people want to do with these balls?
Und was sagt Ellen White? Was wollen die Menschen tun mit diesen Kugeln?
Black balls, right?
Also schwarze Kugeln.
And they want to throw them at you and make your garment dirty. Okay.
Die wollen dich damit bewerfen und deine Gewand schmutzig machen.
Okay. And also, when you go to Lamentations, chapter 5.
Wenn du zu Klagelieder Kapitel 5 gehst.
Lamentations 5, and Lamentations 5 is written after Jerusalem got destroyed.
Klagelieder 5 und das ist geschrieben, nachdem Jerusalem zerstört wurde.
Okay. Scott, you want to read verse 10, please, for us?
Yes. Lamentations 5.
Verse 10.
Our skin was black like an oven because of the terrible famine.
Yes. Okay. So they were also, they were in the famine. There were these sinners in Jerusalem.
So die war in den Hungersnot, die waren diesen Sündern in Jerusalem.
And it says they were also black.
Und es sagte, dass sie schwarz waren.
Okay. And when you just read this next quote here that I will post.
Und wenn du diesen nächsten Zitat liest, die ich jetzt poste.
Jeremiah says it.
Mhm.
In chapter 8 and verse 21.
Okay. No?
Jeremia 8, 21.
I know that there's better scriptures even. 8, 21. Yes.
Jeremia 8, 21.
Let's read also verse 20 to 21.
20 und 21 lesen wir.
It says, the harvest is past, the summer is ended, and we are not saved. For the hurt of the daughter of my people I am hurt, I am black. Astonishment hath taken hold on me. Okay.
And the Bible explains what that means, because
Die Bibel erklärt, was dies bedeutet.
and there's quite a few places in the Bible. It says, if you go to there's certain different ones. Okay, Nahum chapter 2 and verse 10.
Wenn wir zu Nahum Kapitel 2 und Vers 10.
It explains what this, why he says I am black.
Es erklärt, warum sagt, ich bin schwarz. Nahum 2, Vers 10.
Okay, yes. Yes. Okay. It says, she's empty and void and waste, speaking about the city.
Spricht hier über der Stadt.
And the heart melteth, and the knees smite together, and much pain is in all loins, and the faces of them all gather blackness. So this speaks about Nineveh,
Spricht
which
über
is Babylon.
was Babylon
It's
ist.
like the close of probation.
Yes.
Das ist wie der Schluss der Gnaden.
And this is also what she quotes here in this quote that I posted.
Das ist auch, was sie in den Zitat zitiert, was ich hier in den Livestream soeben gepostet habe. Das
Okay.
wollen wir jetzt lesen.
It speaks about the end of the, I think, either when he comes or the end of the 1,000 years. I cannot recall at the moment.
Das spricht
I think
entweder, wenn
second coming it is.
sein zweites Kommen, glaube ich.
It says here, before his presence, all faces are turned into paleness. Upon the rejectors of God's mercy falls the terror of eternal despair. Okay, so it's those that rejected God, they know have eternal despair.
So, diejenigen, die Gott verworfen haben, haben dieses ewiges Entsetzen.
It says, the heart melteth and the knees smite together, and the faces of them all gather blackness. So you can see it's the wicked that receive this blackness on their
Hier
faces.
könnt ihr sehen, es ist die Bösen, die diese Schwarze des Gesichtes bekommen.
Quote. Bless you. Okay. And also Job, when he was plagued with these leprosy, which is a symbol for sin, he said, my skin is black. Okay.
Auch Hiob, als geplagt wurde mit diesen Leprakrankheit, was auch ein Symbol für die Sünde ist, sagte, mein Haut ist schwarz.
And also those that were in the famine in Jerusalem when it got destroyed, Jeremiah also said in Lamentations, my skin or our skin is black. Okay.
Auch diejenigen, die in Jerusalem in der Hungersnot zerstört wurde, Jeremia sagte in Klagelieder, mein Haut ist schwarz, unser Haut ist schwarz.
Okay, and this obviously doesn't mean anything negative in the natural sense. Black people are not greater sinners than white people. Okay.
Das bedeutet nichts in der natürlichen, also schwarze Menschen sind nicht größere Sünder als weiße Menschen.
But it just is a symbol that the Lord wants to use.
Ein Symbol, die der Herr benutzen möchte.
It's just like he used the Jews to illustrate the righteous people, but they were no more righteous than the rest of the world.
So wie er die Juden benutzt hat, um ein gerechtes Volk darzustellen, aber sie waren nicht mehr gerecht als überhaupt wer anderen. So eher das Gegenteil, sie werden eher mehr stur.
Yes. And the Lord knew that there would be the slavery in the United States in the future, so he could use the black people to illustrate the sinners that are bound in the slavery of sin. Okay.
Der Herr wusste, dass Sklavereiproblem in den USA geben würde und deswegen konnte den Schwarzen da benutzen, um diejenigen, die in der Sklaverei sind, als diejenigen in der Sklaverei der Sünde darzustellen.
Okay, so now let's go back to the notes.
So, gehen wir zurück zu den Notizen.
Many of those who are placed high in command to fill responsible stations have but little conscience or no nobility of soul. They can exercise their power even to the destruction of those under them, and it is winked at. These commanders could abuse the power given them and cause those subject to them to occupy dangerous positions where they would be exposed to terrible encounters with the rebels without the least hope of conquering them. In this way they could dispose of daring, thoroughgoing men as David disposed of Uriah.
Okay, so again she uses some principles from the scriptures to show how people deal or dealt in this war. Okay.
So, wieder, sie used Prinzipien, die man in den Schriften finden kann, um zu zeigen, wie Menschen mit anderen Menschen in diesem Krieg umgegangen sind.
And therefore we can be sure that, that everything that takes place on this world you can explain by God's word. Okay.
Deswegen kannst du sicher sein, dass alles, was auf dieser Erde stattfindet, kannst du aus Gottes Wort erklären.
Okay. Wanted to say something?
Just that, you know, like in the past, in the olden times, officers, even in the First World War, for instance, they could send all those men over the top, right, into all these machine gun positions where it's almost certain death, right? And those men, if they refused the order, knowing that they're just going to die, they would shoot them, right? And the problem is they're basically sentencing them to death without a trial.
That's right.
And, you know, it's terrible, but the sane man would say, no, I'm not going to do that. That's suicide. What function is that? You know, but yet these people looked upon that as rebellion and put them to death when really it wasn't. It's this very principle it's speaking about here.
Also in der Vergangenheit, zum Beispiel im Ersten Weltkrieg, diese Offiziere, die konnten all diesen Männern aus den Graben herausbefehlen, um den Feinden zuzurennen, und die rennen ins Maschinengewehrfeuer und es war ein sicheres Tod. Und wenn sie sich weigerten oder sagten Nein, sie würden erschossen wegen Rebellion. Aber im Grunde es war diese fürchterliche Offiziere, die haben letztendlich diesen Männern ein Todesurteil verhängt, ohne Verhör in dem Sinne. Und das ist genau das Prinzip, was wir hier lesen.
Yes.
Terrible.
And this is also what we can see now in this war, right?
Und das ist auch das, was wir sehen können in diesem Krieg, especially in the side of the
Yeah,
Russians.
the Russian soldiers, if they don't go, they get either in the Gulag or get shot, right?
Also die russischen Soldaten, wenn sie nichts tun, was ihnen befohlen würden, sie gehen in den Gulag, was russisches
Straflager.
Strafanstalt ist, oder sie werden eben erschossen.
Yes. So, let's continue.
Lesen wir weiter.
Next paragraph.
Nächster Absatz.
Valiant men have thus been sacrificed to get rid of the strong anti-slavery influence. Some of the very men whom the North most need in this critical time, whose services would be of the highest value, are not. They have been wantonly sacrificed. The prospects before our nation are discouraging, for there are those filling responsible stations who are rebels at heart. There are commanding officers who are in sympathy with the rebels. While they are desirous of having the Union preserved, they despise those who are under slavery. Some of the armies also are composed largely of such material. They are so opposed to one another that no real union exists among many regiments.
Is that not what they did with Sister White?
Ist das nicht, was sie mit Ellen White taten?
Because the conference had the same spirit as the world.
Weil der Konferenz dieselbe Geist wie der Welt hatte.
And she spoke out against it, so they got rid of her. They sent her to Australia.
Sie hat dagegen gesprochen, also sie sind sie losgeworden, indem dass sie nach Australien schickte.
So in some sense they were getting rid of her, sacrificing her, so they could continue in their.
In dem Sinne, sie hat sie aufgeopfert, sodass sie weiter in ihrem Sünden vorangehen konnten.
Yes, and so and we also can see here now that many commanding officers in the north were actually sympathizing with the rebels.
Und wir konnten hier sehen, wie wir gelesen haben, viele von den Offizieren im Norden haben Sympathie mit den Rebellen gehabt.
Okay, and they just wanted to preserve the Union, but they didn't want to get rid of slavery actually.
So, die wollten nur diese Union präservieren, also aufrechthalten, aber sie hatten kein Interesse, den Sklaverei loszuwerden.
And all these anti-slavery men in the north, they just wanted to get rid of them.
Und all diese im Norden, die gegen den Sklaverei waren, sie losgeworden, also wollten sie loswerden.
Okay, next paragraph.
Nächster Absatz.
As this war was shown to me, it looked like the most singular and uncertain that has ever occurred. A great share of the volunteers enlisted fully believing that the result of the war would be to abolish slavery. Others enlisted intending to be very careful to keep slavery just as it is, but to put down the rebellion and preserve the Union. And then, to make the matter still more perplexing and uncertain, some of the officers in command are strong pro-slavery men whose sympathies are all with the South, yet who are opposed to a separate government. It seems impossible to have the war conducted successfully, for many in our own ranks are continually working to favor the South, and our armies have been repulsed and unmercifully slaughtered on account of the management of these pro-slavery men. Some of our leading men in Congress are constantly working to favor the South.
Okay, let's stop here for now. So we can see there were these different dynamics, right? These different motives among different groups of people. Right?
Wir können sehen, es gab diese verschiedenen Dynamiken, diese verschiedenen Absichten unter diese verschiedenen Gruppen im Norden.
So these things are always very complex. Yeah.
Diese Dinge sind öfter sehr kompliziert.
And that's why Ezekiel saw also the complicated play of human events. It's not easy to see everything at the first glance.
Deswegen hat Hesekiel diese komplizierte Anspielung von menschlichen Ereignissen gesehen. Es ist nicht immer so klar auf ersten Anhieb da durchzublicken.
Zusammenspiel. Clay, it's Anspiel. Okay.
What did I say?
Anspiel.
Okay, Zusammenspiel.
Okay, just continue.
Lesen wir weiter.
Some of our leading men in Congress are constantly working to favor the South. In this state of things, proclamations are issued for national fast, for praying that God will bring this war to a speedy and favorable termination. I was then directed to Isaiah 58. Is it such a fast that I have chosen, a day for a man to afflict his soul? Is it to bow down his head as a bulrush, and to spread sackcloth and ashes under him? Will thou call this a fast and an acceptable day to the Lord? Is not this the fast that I have chosen? To loose the bands of wickedness, to undo the heavy burdens, and to let the oppressed go free, and that you break every yoke? Is it not to deal thy bread to the hungry, and that thou bring the poor that are cast out to thy house? When thou seest the naked, and thou cover him, and that thou hide not thyself from thy own flesh?
Okay, so now she applies here Isaiah 58 to the situation.
Wendet sie hier Jesaja 58 zu diesen Situationen an.
Where they made now this false fast in God's eyes.
Wo sie diese falsche Fast in Gottes Augen gemacht haben.
Fasten. Ja.
Falsches Fasten.
Okay, next paragraph.
Nächster Absatz.
I saw that these national fasts were an insult to Jehovah. He accepts of no such fast. The recording angel writes in regard to them, "Ye fast for strife and debate, and to smite with the first fist of wickedness." I was shown how our leading men have treated the poor slaves, who have come to them for protection. Angels have recorded it. Instead of breaking their yoke and letting the oppressed go free, these men have made the yoke more galling for them than when in the service of their tyrannical masters. Love of liberty leads the poor slaves to leave their masters and risk their lives to obtain liberty. They would never venture to leave their masters and expose themselves to the difficulties and horrors attending their recapture if they had not as strong a love for liberty as any of us. The escaped slaves have endured untold hardships and dangers to obtain their freedom, and as their last hope, with the love of liberty burning in their breasts, they apply to our government for protection, but their confidence has been treated with the utmost contempt. Many of them have been cruelly treated because they committed so great a crime as to dare to make an effort to obtain their freedom. Great men, professing to have human hearts, have seen the slaves almost naked and starving, and have abused them and sent them back to their cruel masters in hopeless bondage, to suffer inhuman cruelty for daring to seek their liberty. Some of this wretched class they thrust into unwholesome dungeons, to live or die, they cared not which. They have deprived them of the liberty and free air which heaven has never denied them, and then left them to suffer for food and clothing. In view of all this, a national fast is proclaimed. Oh, what an insult to Jehovah! The Lord said by the mouth of Isaiah, Yet they seek me daily, and delight to know my ways, as a nation that did righteousness, and forsook not the ordinance of their God."
Yes. So we see that the North, or at least responsible men in the North, they sent back the slaves that actually managed to escape the South, and so they were not really interested in their freedom.
So wir können sehen, dass verantwortliche Männer im Norden haben diese frei entkommenen Sklaven zurückgesandt zum Süden. Also sie hatten nicht wirklich ihre Freiheit im Herzen.
And then they made this pretentious fast, okay.
Und dann haben sie diese Vorwand eines Fastens gemacht.
And yes, but obviously the Lord saw right through it.
Aber der Herr, der sah, was dahinter steckt.
Okay, next paragraph.
Nächster Absatz.
The escaped slaves had been told by their masters that the northern men wanted to get possession of them, that they might cruelly misuse, thank you, them that the abolitionists would treat them worse than they had been treated while in slavery. All manner of horrible stories have been repeated in their ears to make them detest the North, and yet they have had a confused idea that some hearts in the North felt for their grievances and would yet make an effort to help them.
Okay, just so everybody understood. The southern slave men, they told the slaves, if you go to the north, they will even treat you worse. Okay.
Südmännern, die Sklaven hatten, die haben ihre Sklaven gesagt, wenn du zum Norden entkommst, die werden dich schlimmer behandeln als wir.
Okay. So.
This has been the only star which has shed its glimmering light upon their distressed and gloomy bondage. The manner in which the poor slaves have been treated has led them to believe that their masters have told them the truth in these things, and yet a national fast is proclaimed, saith the Lord. Is not this the fast that I have chosen? To loose the bands of wickedness, to undo the heavy burdens, and to let the oppressed go free, and that ye break every yoke? When our nation observes the fast which God has chosen, then will he accept their prayers as far as the war is concerned. But now they enter not into his ear. He turns from them, they are disgusting to him. It is so managed that those who would undo the heavy burdens and break every yoke are placed under censure, or removed from responsible stations, or their lives in this. Okay. I don't know this. Lives are planned away by those who fast for strife and debate, and to smite with the thirst of wickedness.
Yes. Alright, so we can see you can really not trust in man, right?
Und wir sehen, dass wir den Menschen nicht vertrauen können.
Yeah, you cannot put trust in man.
Du kannst dein Vertrauen nicht in Menschen setzen.
Okay. So, next paragraph.
I was shown that if the object of this war had been to exterminate slavery, then, if desired, England would have helped the North. But England fully understands the existing feelings in the government, and that the war is not to do away slavery, but merely to preserve the Union, and is not for her interest to have it preserved. Our government has been very proud and independent. The people of this nation have exalted themselves to heaven and have looked down upon monarchical governments and triumphed in their boasted liberty, while the institution of slavery, that was 1,000 times worse than the tyranny exercised by monarchical governments, was suffered to exist and was cherished. In this land of light, a system is cherished which allows one portion of the human family to enslave another portion, degrading millions of human beings to the level of the brute creation. The equal of this sin is not to be found in heathen lands.
Okay, so here we can see that England would have helped the North if they would really have fought for a righteous cause.
So hier können wir sehen, dass England hätte den Norden geholfen, hätten sie gedacht, dass sie für eine gerechte Sache gekämpft hätten.
And then also we see what did the United States do with respect to the other nations?
So was tat den USA in Bezug auf den anderen Nationen? Greater sin.
What principle is it?
So welches Prinzip ist das?
What did they look at?
So was haben sie geschaut?
The monarchical.
It says here, the people of this nation have exalted themselves to heaven and have looked down upon monarchical governments and triumphed in their boasted liberty, while the institution of slavery, that was 1,000 times worse in the tyranny existed by monarchical governments, was suffered to exist and was cherished. So what did they see?
So was sahen sie?
Remember, it's always, what does this White say in education?
Was sagt Ellen White im Buch der Erziehung?
Same principles apply to nations church and individuals, right?
Dasselbe Prinzip ist Nationen, Gemeinden und Einzelpersonen
And what does
anzunehmen.
the Lord say in Matthew 7?
Was sagt der Herr in Matthäus 7?
Beam and the moat.
Yes, exactly. Okay. They saw the beam in the other nation's eye. Okay.
Sie haben den Balken in dieser anderen Nationen.
Sorry, they saw the mote in the other nation's eye. Okay.
Sie haben den
Splitter.
Splitter oder Moat ist eine Fliege.
Ne, Splitter.
A moat is a Fliege.
Mote.
Yes.
M-O-T-E.
A moat's a little fly.
Splinter.
Okay, doesn't matter. Also sie haben einen Splitter in den Augen von diesen anderen Nationen gesehen.
But they didn't see the beam in their own eye.
Aber sie haben den Balken im eigenen Auge nicht gesehen.
Okay. So, therefore we can see always these principles on all these different levels, how they apply.
Deswegen können wir all diese Prinzipien auf all diese verschiedenen Ebenen sehen.
Well, it's the same in the church, right? The church looks outwardly
Yes,
at the wicked world, but it says you have more to fear from within than without.
exactly.
Die Gemeinde schaut auf die böse Welt da draußen, aber in Whiteside, es gibt mehr zu fürchten von innen als nach außen.
So therefore, when you apply this now, it says you have to search your own heart, right?
Also wenn du das anwendest, es sagst, dass du dein eigenes Herz
So,
durchforschen
Also a
sollst.
nation therefore should not be concerned so much about the wickedness that is going out there. I mean, it should, but not so much as with the wickedness that goes on in their own land. Okay.
Eine Nation sollte nicht so sehr bedacht sein, was da draußen abgeht, sondern eher, was in ihrem eigenen Land abspielt.
Yes. And if they can correct all the things in their own land, then they can go and help other countries. Okay.
So, wenn sie alles in ihrem eigenen Land im Griff haben, dann können sie auch anderen Ländern helfen.
Yeah, it's always the same principle. Okay.
Immer dasselbe Prinzip.
For instance, in the United States, they always play this role of these pretended, like, let's say,
This lamb.
this lamb, these peacekeepers and these what's the right word? Basically, these corrector of heretics. Okay.
In den USA spielt diese Rolle von den Zurechtweiser von Heretikern.
But they themselves have always these huge problems in their own country.
Aber sie selbst haben diesen riesigen Problem im eigenen Land.
It's just hypocrisy. Heuchelei.
Es ist eben nur Heuchelei.
Okay, so let's continue.
Lesen wir weiter.
Next paragraph.
Nächster Absatz.
Is me? Okay. Said the angel, "Hear, O heavens, the cry of the oppressed, and reward the oppressors double according to their deeds. This nation will yet be humbled into the dust." So, what should they receive?
Was sollten sie erhalten?
Receive double, right?
Doppelt.
It's like this punishment on Babylon.
Diese Bestrafung, die auf Babylon kommt.
This nation will yet be humbled into the dust. England is studying whether it is best to take advantage of the present weak condition of our nation and venture to make war upon her. She is weighing the matter and trying to sound other nations. She fears, if she should commence war abroad, that she would be weak at home, and that other nations would take advantage of her weakness. Other nations are making quiet yet active preparations for war, and are hoping that England will make war with our nation, for then they would improve the opportunity to be revenged on her for the advantage she has taken of them in the past and the injustice done them. A portion of the Queen's subjects are waiting a favorable opportunity to break their yoke, but if England thinks it will pay, she will not hesitate a moment to improve her opportunities to exercise her power and humble our nation. When England does declare war, all nations will have an interest of their own to serve, and there will be a general war, general confusion. So here we can see that it's just like at the moment, right?
Also hier können wir sehen, es ist gerade wie im Moment.
For instance, China is now trying to take advantage and is looking, can we, for instance, invade Taiwan? Okay.
China zum Beispiel schaut, was für einen Vorteil sie in dieser Situation gewinnen kann. Zum Beispiel, ob sie nun in Taiwan eingreifen können.
But they always need to consider, okay, if we get involved in this war, we leave a door open for for other nations not to attack us. Okay.
Aber sie müssen ins Erwägung bringen, wenn sie hier diesen Kampf führen würden, dann lassen sie schwach an anderen Grenzen, wo andere Länder sie da angreifen konnten.
For instance, therefore Putin was not a stupid move that he made ready his atomic rockets. Okay.
So, es war keine blöde Sache, die Putin gemacht hat, indem dass er seine Atomwaffen bereitstellten.
Because, for instance, China, they claim to be his friends. Okay.
China, sie sagen, dass sie Russlands Freund sei.
But they could easily invade Russia also. Okay.
Aber sie konnten einfach Russland angreifen,
If it was not for these atomic weapons they have.
wenn es nicht für diese Atomwaffen wäre.
Okay, so therefore, yeah, you always have this cause and effect scenario when war breaks out.
Immer diese Wirkung und Ursache Sache, die man in Betracht ziehen muss mit Krieg.
Okay, so let's continue.
Immer weiter.
England is acquainted with the diversity of feeling among those who are seeking to quell the rebellion. She well knows the perplexed condition of our government. She has looked with astonishment at the prosecution of this war, the slow, inefficient moves, the inactivity of our armies, and the ruinous expenses of our nation. The weakness of our government is fully open before other nations, and they now conclude that it is because it was not a monarchical government, and they admire their own government and look down, some with pity, others with contempt, upon our nation, which they have regarded as the most powerful upon the globe. Had our nation remained united, it would have had strength, but divided it must fall. Okay, so this also applies to nations.
Auch Nationen anzuwenden.
Okay, so I think probably cannot really read the next chapter. We can continue tomorrow evening.
Also wir werden damit morgen Abend fortsetzen.
But we can see that this war back then was already a perplexing thing.
Wir können sehen, dass dieser Krieg damals war perplex.
Ja, verwirrende Sache. Ja.
War eine verwirrende Sache.
And through the spirit of prophecy we have clear understanding what was going on there actually. Okay.
Und durch die Geist der Weissagung haben wir Klarheit über das, was da abging.
Okay. But this just shows us that also now in this war there are many perplexing constellations.
Aber das zeigt uns auch in diesem jetzigen Krieg, dass es viele verwirrende, komplexe Zusammenstellungen gibt.
And we really need God's help to always see these things correctly and see who's playing which role and so on and so forth. Okay.
Wir brauchen Gottes Hilfe, um dies korrekt anzuschauen und zu sehen, wer welche Rolle spielt.
Yes. But I think we already understand quite some things, but
ich glaube, wir verstehen einiges wohl.
But still, there are probably different things that we still need to understand more clearly.
Aber es gibt sicher andere Sachen, die wir klarer verstehen müssen.
Okay. So, could everybody follow
So
along?
konnte jeder mitfolgen?
Yes. Okay. So it's definitely an interesting read, and I think this civil war will make us understand many things.
Das ist auf jeden Fall sehr interessant und dieser Bürgerkrieg wird uns helfen, viele Sachen zu verstehen.
Not only with respect to this war, but also with respect to what goes on in the Sunday law.
So, nicht nur in Bezug auf diesen jetzigen Krieg, sondern auch darauf, was in den Sonntagsgesetz abspielen wird.
Okay? Amen.
Amen.
Okay, then let's close with our prayer.
Lass uns mit unserer Gebet anschließen.